We respect the choice of the British people and will remain a strong partner of the UK and the European Union. Our shared histories and common values make us natural trading partners, and we will continue to work with both of them as we move forward with this new decision.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reacts to the decision by voters in the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. It's a result that will shake up Europe and have global repercussions, including right here in Canada. We've convened our Sunday Scrum. Joining me from Ottawa, freelance columnist Susan Riley and the CBC's Julie Van Dusen. Now, I want to get to the Canadian response and potential fallout in a moment, but I think we need to start with what Dominic was just addressing, which is this utter revolt within the Labour Party in the UK. Susan, I'm wondering how you're responding to this.
Well, from this great distance, Jeremy Corbyn has always struck me as a somewhat lackluster politician. He's been, he's a real, in British terms, left-wing ideologue, a party stalwart from the get-go, but more comfortable sort of knocking on doors and organizing community bingos, really, than leading a major political party. So some of the disappointment with his performance, on the Remain side, probably has deeper roots than just this particular setback, is my sense, and it doesn't surprise me in the least. He's a controversial choice for the Labour Party, which, as you know, has been struggling ever since Tony Blair left the helm. So I think it's probably complicated. It's a pretext almost to move him aside in favor of a more popular leader.
Julie, any thoughts from you?
Well, he's always been seen as a Eurosceptic, and so now people are lashing out, wondering who to blame. I mean, David Cameron has already kind of taken the big hit, and now the ripple effect happens. So we'll see it in politics, we'll see it on the financial markets, and that's the thing. No one knows exactly where it'll stop.
Okay, so let's bring it back home. The Brexit has happened. There's no turning around now. And what we just heard from the Prime Minister is a sort of reassuring tone, essentially something we've heard from other EU leaders. Don't worry, it's going to be okay, whatever Britain decides to do. Do you think that's a necessary step at this point for him to be reassuring Canadians, particularly Canadian businesses? Julie?
I think. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jill.
I mean, initially on Friday, we saw the impact right away. The pound, the euro, the Canadian dollar dropped a cent. Now everybody's weighing in on what it will mean financially, what it'll do to interest rates, what it will do to the housing market, what it will do to businesses who are doing, trade with Britain as a foothold into the EU. The bottom line is there are so many questions. It's a bucking bronco. Financially, if the EU starts to have other ramifications, if other countries try to get out, this whole divorce is going to take a couple of years. I know the EU is saying, get it done, get it over with, you want out, move on it. But, how long will it actually take? And it'll be so much financial instability, certainly overseas, and how will that ripple down to Canada? We don't know, but many people are speculating it's going to be a long ride.
What do you think, Susan?
What I think, I'm kind of relatively sanguine about the whole thing. In fact, I slept through my own alarm this morning, so don't expect me to be alert.
You're not doing business in Britain, are you?
No, I'm not. But still, I hate to quote Donald Trump. This is probably the last time I'll do it.
Oh, boy.
Donald Trump, was opening his new golf course in Scotland during the midst of this crisis, and he said, hey, the pound's going to sink. This is going to be good for tourism. I have to say that thought did pass through my own mind. And, Canada does $800 million to $1 billion, spends $800 to $1 billion every year, Canadians in Britain as tourists. I mean, it's a major destination for us. So that'll be a short-term benefit. On the trade front, trade in goods, I think we're, 3%? Britain is, 3% of our export market, so it's relatively small. I think it's third after the U.S., which, of course, is the dominant one. And I forget, Netherlands. Investment, there's a lot of Canadian investment in England. Will that pull out? Will that withdraw? I don't know. It's mostly in a lot of it is in the financial sector. It's probably not good news for England overall. I don't think it's going to be devastating, though, and I think trade will resume its natural organic course with the passage of time.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing that up, because on the issue of international trade, we heard from the Minister, Chrystia Freeland, on Friday, also responding, also saying that, don't worry, it's going to be okay. Canada is ready to move forward, making deals with the EU, and if need be, with Britain. They brought up CETA, of course, the Canadian-EU free trade deal. Julie, I'm wondering, from your perspective, what kind of impact Brexit has on CETA?
Well, I mean, Chrystia Freeland can say that she's determined to finalize this deal, but who really knows? With Britain out, that's a gaping hole. Britain is now saying they'd like to negotiate their own deals with Canada and other countries, but they're going to be in the middle of their own divorce with the EU. The EU is in a divorce with Britain. Jean Charest, you know, the former Premier of Quebec, has said, you know, we need to get this deal done. The EU deal is really important. It's been years in the making. It involves 500 million consumers. It's going to remove tariffs on more than 90% of goods and services going back and forth, including beef and seafood and so on. It's an important deal. But the thing is, how does anyone know? I mean, Gordon Campbell, the High Commissioner to Britain, said just before the whole Brexit vote, he said, you know, if the outcome is not as we want, or he obviously wanted to remain, it's going to kind of put the kibosh, or certainly a spoke in the wheels of that EU deal, because, you know, I mean, can they walk and chew gum at the same time? Who knows? But when you're in a whole turmoil and you've got so many other ramifications, with Scotland wanting another referendum and France saying, yeah, maybe we'll think about this, you got to keep the EU together. Then you've got to finish up your deal. And then you've got Britain doing a sideshow. I mean, who knows?
And I think that CETA was mired, stuck in the mud, you know, before all this happened, too. I mean, the deal was 7 years. I think the negotiations were 7 years. It's been signed twice. It still hasn't been ratified. Before it takes effect, it has to be ratified by the 27 remaining countries. In the EU, there's a lot of things competing for their attention, as Julie said, including a similar deal with the United States, which would be more lucrative for Europe. So yes, this will slow things down, but it was a pretty slow-moving freight train to begin with, is my sense.
Well, we had our business panel on yesterday, and they had this interesting perspective that this is going to be terrible for Britain, but potentially great for Canada, because then Canada becomes this English-speaking economic hub that London can no longer be, because it's decided to remove itself from the EU. We'll just have to wait and see.